Welcome to CTV's Capital Dispatch with Rachel Aiello.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Aiello, and here's what happened in Canadian politics this week that I think you should know about. There's 4 stories I wanted to highlight this week, starting with the historic election of Canada's first Black House of Commons Speaker, Liberal MP Greg Fergus. So that was the first order of business when MPs got here this week. There were 7 candidates on the ballot, and after a couple hours of speeches and backroom negotiations, secret ballot voting, he was declared the winner. There was a bit of back and forth between the House and Senate, acknowledging he was their pick. He took the chair, Greg Fergus, speaking about how much he loves Parliament. He used to be a parliamentary page, one of those often students you see walking through the chamber, offering water, passing notes to MPs. But he also said that he was a subscriber to Hansard, which, for the nerds, is essentially the transcript of Parliament. So he's clearly coming into this role with the promise of improving decorum, getting everyone to respect each other, which, as we'll get to a bit later, might be a pretty big task. It's something multiple speakers have promised. But this election of the speaker was really the House of Commons trying to turn the page from what we saw and transpire over the last week with the acrimony over that Nazi invite. And the aftershocks of that story, that's the second thing I wanted to talk about, are still being felt. So the conversation on the Hill now is more about whether Canada should unseal some of the Holocaust-era records. Rito Hall this week also had to apologize for granting an Order of Canada award to a fellow Nazi war veteran that served in the same SS unit as Hunka did. And so that's still kind of a permeating story we're watching. The third thing I wanted to talk to you a bit about was grocery prices. So this week, as they were on schedule to do, the government came forward with what they said is their initial plan with grocers to stabilize prices. You'll remember that the Liberals had promised that by Thanksgiving, they would have a plan with grocers to try to get high food costs under control. And what Champagne, the minister responsible, came forward with on Thursday was a series of measures. So he is saying that after talks with the big 5 grocers, they're all going to do their own thing. Obviously, under competition laws, they can't all get together and talk about lowering prices, but they've offered him one-off suggestions of what they want to do. So that includes price freezing, price matching, and some ephemeral thing I'm not quite sure on about discounts on a basket of priority food items. So probably likely the grocery staples that you see. There's also a number of steps he said the government is going to be taking, including a new grocery task force meant to kind of monitor the grocers' progress on this on a monthly basis, report back. The question to the minister was really like, is this your grand plan? Price freezing, price matching are ideas that grocers have had for years. Some of them have taken that approach even in this inflation environment. And the minister said, essentially, this isn't the end of the road, just the start. So they remain open to leveling penalties, potentially tax measures on grocers if they don't follow through with their plan to get grocery prices under control. This prompted, and we'll get to it in a second, an entire kerfluffle in the House of Commons on Thursday, with Poilievre, the Conservative leader, calling Champagne a turkey. So back to that question of decorum that the new House Speaker has to handle. We'll see how that goes. And lastly, speaking of other things that happened in the House of Commons that raised my eyebrows this week, there's a defector in the Liberal ranks. There was a motion voted on Wednesday, a Conservative carbon tax motion calling for the House of Commons to repeal the price on pollution. And it got the backing of one Liberal MP, Ken McDonald from Avalon, Newfoundland, voted with the Conservatives. The motion didn't pass because all other Liberals, New Democrats, and Bloc MPs voted against it. But really, it was a boon for the Conservatives. They're now fundraising off of this, pointing out the fact that there's a Liberal MP who agrees with them that the carbon price is not a good policy. It's not the first time he's done this either. But interesting to see whether more MPs defect in this way. You know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. MPs don't always have to agree with their party. But every time it happens, it kind of catches our attention.
Canadians didn't want champagne for Thanksgiving. They just want some food. And I did a little bit of price shopping on that for him. In the last days of the Conservative government, the price for a pound of turkey was $1.49, and the flyers today show it's $2.49, a 70% increase. And I might add that the picture of the turkey during the Conservative years was a big, plump, beautiful bird, whereas right now it's a skimpy, shrimpy little thing that looks like it's been taxed to death.
So that's Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons on Thursday. This exchange with Minister Champagne, you get that Champagne reference there, came just after the minister announced that grocery package, this idea of the different ways that grocers are going to stabilize prices in Canada. And I picked this as my quote of the week for two reasons. One, it's been a heavy, intense last couple weeks on Parliament Hill. So it's in one way kind of nice to see them finding some levity. It was a bit of a zinger. I don't know if I'm going to get out of my head that idea of a skimpy, shrimpy turkey when I go to sit down for mine this weekend. So I just think it's an interesting example of how things are going in the House right now. You know, Poilievre really here in this clip is leaning back into what we've seen for years, is his attack dog, gleeful style of going after the government in the House of Commons. Maybe a bit less of what we've seen of him of late, a bit more restrained, pulled back, trying to present a softer image. And what I thought was interesting as well was the minister's response. He said, you know, Poilievre can have all the fun he wants, but Canadians aren't having much fun right now, which I don't know if that was a choice of words he maybe have wanted. The Liberals or the Conservatives kind of jeered when that happened. But I do think as well, this is an indication of the level of rancor and tension in the House right now. There's a lot of politicking going on. And that kind of compounds this promise from the House Speaker to get things under control when it comes to respect for one another. As for what I'm watching on the calendar next week, well, it's a break week in the House of Commons. MPs hate it when we call it a break week. They call it a constituency week because they're not taking a break. They're just in their ridings, working with their constituents, but they won't be in Ottawa. So that means Dispatch is going to take a pause next week, but political news has not stopped. So we will cover the latest. The one specific thing I wanted to highlight that's happening next week is the NDP are holding a convention. So the federal NDP are going to gather in Hamilton, Ontario, typically a Liberal or an NDP stronghold, to talk about policies, kind of get ready for the next election. There'll be a lot of socializing as well. And they're going to be doing what they're calling an affordability canvass in one of the ridings that over the last couple of elections has swung between the Liberals and NDP. So some strategy at play there. But these policy conventions are also an opportunity for headlines to be made. So what I'm going to be watching for is if there's any contentious policies that are brought forward and advanced by New Democrat members. As well, I'll be watching to see how NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is received by the party faithful. Now, a couple of years into this supply and confidence deal with the Liberals, how are they feeling about that? So we'll have the latest across all platforms on that one for you at ctvnews.ca, CTV News Channel, et cetera, you know where to find us. So that's something to kind of keep on your radar for next week. And with that, that's how I saw this week in politics. Thanks for watching.